Afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this third day of Enable Ottawa. This has been a really great week, Accessibility Week. There's events all over the place, but I've been able to join all of the Enable Ottawa events, and my goodness, it feels really good to be part of this organization and part of this great event that we've been doing now for 5 years. Actually, it's 6 or 7 years. We just changed the name to Enable Ottawa 5 years ago, but when we started READ, it was one of the things that we really wanted to do with READ was to connect with the community. And I'm pleased to say that all of the partners who originally started Enable Ottawa with us are still with us. And you'll see their names in the great platform we're using this year where they come up all the time. I want to just say there's a few things I'd like to highlight from what I've seen so far. And day one was quite fabulous. The organizations, the entrepreneurs that presented to us really showed what can be done when people work together. And I think the big takeaway from that first day for me was that both Joe Weber with Be My Eyes and Mayan Ziv with Access Now spoke about how everyone can get involved and everyone can do a little more. You don't have to do a lot to do something. And so the opportunity to be involved in the accessibility movement is there. And what an exciting time this is to be involved in accessibility. So many great progress steps have been made. The law has been passed. Federally, soon we're going to see more action on that. So many great entrepreneurial ideas are coming into fruition, and it's exciting to be part of that. Taking that a little further, after that first session, in the early afternoon, we had the opportunity to meet with some researchers, a couple from Carleton, one from U of T, one from Europe. And oh my goodness, there's so many good things going on. And the wonderful aspect of, maybe this is a COVID result in a way, the world has become so much closer and smaller. And you see the opportunity to meet with people all over the world, even though we're doing it remotely. But the connections are going to have a great positive impact, I think, on everything we do. Day two, we moved into the role of the City of Ottawa. And this is really exciting because this is the first year that the City of Ottawa itself has become one of our main partners. They've always been aware of what we've been doing. They've always had speakers well, not every year, but most years at Enable. But this year they're at the table. And what a great addition to the table. And we're really appreciative of that. And having the mayor speak, a former Carleton grad, a friend to Carleton all these years, having him speak, having him officially join the CAN initiative announced on Monday, it's a wonderful relationship and collaboration, and we're really looking forward to the future when it comes to the relationship between Carleton and the city. The many programs the city's doing were laid out, and all of these sessions have been taped and will be available. So if you didn't get to any of the ones I'm talking about, the opportunity still exists for you to do that. I'm kind of out of the loop this year on Enable. For the first time since it started, I've handed it over, and I'm not disappointed with the result. I can't say enough about what Moira's done. I really appreciate all the behind the scenes work that's going on in this great new platform that we're using this year. And I also wanted to thank Julie Caldwell, who has stepped in the role that I've had for the last, since it started, years, and has done a great job. And we're really excited about the outcome of this year and the future. Probably the two things that were most important to me with READ were from the beginning, were the whole concept of community, which we're seeing, and this event has always been part of that. And the second biggest thing that we wanted to deal with was the whole business of employment, and how that's probably the biggest issue facing people with disabilities, having fair and equal access to employment. So I'm very excited about this final day when we're going to focus on employment. And it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Sam. I'm not going to try and say your name because I'll make a big mistake with it. So I hope you'll accept my introduction from Brightspace, and also a member of our can on the employment side. And so without further ado, I'll introduce you to Dr. Sam.
Thank you, Dean. And I will, by way of introduction, introduce you now all to Dr. Sam Bhavi, Sandra Shakar, Accessibility Lead of D2L Brightspace. Sam?
Thank you. Thank you, Moira. So let me share the screen. And actually, I have a little spiel here to start this off. I'm honored to be here today as part of Carleton University's celebration of Canada's National Accessibility Week. I'm an elderly Canadian woman of South Asian origin, wearing a black velvet top and a chain with a black owl pendant. My hair is tied back with a clip and some of it is hanging down my shoulders. I'm speaking from my home in Toronto, standing gratefully on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. That's now the home of many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. In the backdrop, I have some indoor plants and a giant teddy bear called Domo that one of my students gifted me. Now, if that suggests anything about my mental age, that's not intentional. And finally, today's my birthday. The topic showing on my title slide. Okay. I'm getting muted again and again. Is that something you want to signal me about?
No, go right ahead, Sam.
I hope you're able to see the slide, right?
Yes, we are, Sam. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to ensure that you're seeing the slide. So the topic showing on my slide is maximizing resilience, building an inclusive new normal with learning integrated life. When I wrote this title, some questions came up in my mind. What is resilience and why should we maximize it? What do we mean by lifelong learning and how would it help? What is the inclusive new normal and why do we need to build it? As we move along, we'll first sort these out so we're all on the same page while I attempt to build out the thesis of my talk. So to begin with the agenda, there are a few items here, but I'm not going to go over them because, well, it's for those who use the deck later, because explaining them here might break the storyline. So now I go directly to what is the thesis of my talk? It's promoting inclusive learning in the workplace is essential to build a resilient economy. Now we'll see how we can build to that. So to begin with, what is resilience and why is it important now? Resilience is one of the most popular topics in positive psychology. At an individual level, it's our ability to recover from or adjust easily to misfortune or change, such as the COVID-19 situation we are all in since early last year. At a systemic level, it's the capacity of the complex adaptive world we live in to adapt successfully to challenges that threaten its function, survival, or future development. Resilience is not only about bouncing back to normal, but also about bouncing forward to a new normal, or more desirably, about building that new normal intentionally, like what I'll be talking about today. Building our resilience as individuals and as an economy is important for us to better adapt to the life-changing events we are all going through now and to enable us to grow into a new level of being. First, disintegration of the normal. We have witnessed this with the COVID-19. On the screen, you have just an image of the COVID-19, what do we call them, germs. As we look at the past, present, and future for perspective, we see that COVID-19 has caused a substantial disintegration of our lives. Disintegration is the process of losing cohesion or strength. In terms of education, we faced upheaving changes. We have to move teaching and learning from the classroom into our homes. In terms of work, again, we moved our workplace into our homes. The dining table has now doubled and tripled up as the classroom and the workplace. At a systemic level, some societal changes already in the making have exacerbated the disintegration. Working individuals are changing jobs or vocations more frequently. And general credential attainments, the way it's usually done, does not help employability as much as there is an increasing need to demonstrate necessary skills for the job. And where are we headed? On the screen, there's just a bunch of question marks about integration into a new normal. As we struggle to achieve stability as a society, we are trying to move teaching and learning back into the classroom, but not entirely. We are trying to move work back into our offices, again with options to do some of it or all of it from home. What kind of new normal are we heading towards, and are we doing it right? Could we view the current disruption as an opportunity to build a new normal intentionally and in a desirable way? Could we prioritize new ways of thinking? At this point, I want to introduce a new term called reintegration. On the screen, there is a picture of which I just want to draw your attention to one word, that is reintegration, and I'll tell you what the picture is about. Reintegration, first of all, is all about what we must do intentionally to get from where we are now to where we want to be, from the current chaos to a resilient, inclusive new normal. So in a recent webinar on reimagining the learning experience that was hosted by Kenneth Chapman of D2L, New York University's Vice Provost for Educational Technologies, Clay Shirky, proposed this idea of a reintegration phase where we need to deliberately make choices and efforts to make that move into the new normal successful. So on the screen, I have Phil Hill's visual showing reintegration as a new phase in COVID response by education. But I want to apply Clay's idea of reintegration to our context of workplace plus education. I'll add those links to the paper and the webinar when I share the deck. So what are some strategies we could think up for workplace plus education? Here I'll present some research results related to education and work that point to the need for restructuring education programs, as well as the need for continuous upskilling and reskilling to stay employed. So in an attempt to understand perceptions of ongoing education and training among adults, D2L conducted an online survey towards the end of December, to end of 2020 and start of 2021 for adults across the United States about three things: their interests in pursuing ongoing education and training, their perceptions of barriers to learning, and their impressions of digital learning tools. Some of the interesting results were, number one, 76% of parents wanted schools to make more use of digital learning tools than they did before COVID-19. This is an increasing interest in technology. Number two, 49% of adults who have recent online learning experience say that the ongoing education and career training courses available to them do not provide them with the skills needed to advance their careers. And another remark was 44% of adults agreed that courses available to continue education or training took too long. There are so many more. Another perspective, research perspective that I want to present is from monster.com, In their Future of Work 2021 report, they say that 1/3 of US employers feel that the skills gap has increased at the end of 2020 compared to 2019. And at least 80% say that they had difficulty filling openings because of skill gaps. And this is the top hurdle in hiring managers that hiring managers expect to face in 2021. Now, understandably, in the next phase of post-pandemic restructuring, it's likely that even more jobs will be remote first and more tasks might be automated. So what does all this lead us to? We need to think about some things we can do. So I'm bringing a couple of methodological and policy changes. These are just two picked up from a paper that D2L published a while recently, which I will provide a link to. So the first policy change, or even the methodological change, is about enabling and supporting reskilling and upskilling in the workplace. On the screen, you see a web page from D2L. It's a product that's rolled out for anybody working in any organization to be able to take short courses that have been put together by educational institutions. And the main part here is that there should be an employer commitment to employee learning, and this should be actually manifested in their policies and processes. Companies need to invest into creating facilities for providing employees with the options to upskill. And this will encourage authentic interest and it'll spur participation. Leadership in companies need to send a clear message that upskilling is an integral part of daily work, and they should build a culture that celebrates skills, achievements, and learning. Employers must invest in supporting a learning and integrated life for their employees, because these days work is increasingly skills-based. At D2L, we have this program open to all of us as employees internally. All of us receive substantial financial support and 2 days off from work to meet their ongoing and future training needs through participation in this D2L Wave. That's our own program for outsiders. The next example I want to show you is to do with restructuring education as it is available right now. On the screen, you have a web page, the opening page of mycreds.ca. This is a place where Canadians can start gathering small credentials in post-secondary programs to eventually get them put together for a particular degree that might lead from there. So this recommendation is about restructuring education programs. Conventional education has traditionally been a path of hurdles for students with disabilities. And now everyone is increasingly realizing that traditional long-form education doesn't work for the needs of today, and shorter skill-based programs are the way to go. There's a lot of talk about upskilling and reskilling, and this is disruptive. And within this disruption lies opportunity. Opportunities for everyone, especially for those whom traditional education has not proved to be very accessible on several counts. So, like I said, this scheme is from the Association of Registrars of the Universities and Colleges of Canada. But where does this put us when it comes to working from home? How does this kind of learning look for a person with a disability who's working from home? And accommodation is key over here. COVID-19 has been hard. It's been harder for those of us living with disabilities. For example, social distancing has been stressful for people who are blind. Work from home needs to be accompanied by measures to address ongoing systemic barriers for people with disabilities. Key employment workplace accommodations for people with disabilities have been traditionally modified working hours, modified duties, modified workstations, and remote work. We know that for most people, it's easier to work from home, but it's harder to get several other accommodations met by the employer. With the right accessible technology and workplace accommodations, as well as inclusive employment policies, people with disabilities will be able to obtain and sustain employment during and post COVID-19. Pre-COVID, the teaching and learning environment, the working environment, these were two different things. With everything going online, there was a tendency to replicate real life online. Every classroom session and work meeting became refashioned into an online Zooms or Teams sessions. There was not enough time to think through, but through the year, we have made changes. Live transcripts have become the norm. Describing everything seen on the screen for those who come in via phone has become a norm. And these changes benefit everyone. Assuming we'll reach a time when things are like how they were pre-COVID, like we don't have to wear a mask and we could hug our friends when we meet them, that is, when we move back to real life in the real world, we don't want to leave all this goodness that developed on the way. We don't want to leave them on the way. So what do we have to do? This is what I call as reintegration, but reintegration in an intentional and mindful way. As much as there was a disintegration with COVID, like everything fell apart and we had to find new ways of doing old things, how is it going to be when things get back to normal? Obviously, we're continuously moving into a new normal. So rather than merely reversing the process back to get where we were, we need to reintegrate intentionally, retaining all the good, all the inclusion that emerged in the process. People with disabilities have historically had a lower employment rate. In fact, the 2017 Canadian Survey on Disabilities reports that 59% of working age people with disabilities were employed, whereas for people without disabilities, this ratio was close to 80%. We need to make the upskilling, reskilling opportunities at the workplace and outside accessible and inclusive. The digital version of the proverbial classroom door or the workplace door that we have now set up has the potential for enabling a more equitable access to learning and work opportunities anywhere, anytime, for everyone. We must make use of this opportunity to work on an intentional and mindful reintegration so as to land in a new normal that is inclusive of everyone, especially of all persons living or experiencing a disability. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to this problem. Education is the key to unlocking all these opportunities. Learning can and should happen anytime, anywhere, and for everyone. Promoting learning at the workplace is essential to build a resilient economy. To succeed in any or all of this, inclusion is key. What is also key is embracing the mindset of lifelong learning. At D2L, we coined a new name for this. It's called Learning Integrated Life. So what is learning integrated life? It's a way of life that embraces the spirit of lifelong learning. It's a learning continuum from primary school to post-secondary education and beyond into work. This means having a learning mindset and engaging in frequent, short bursts of learning even while working. This prepares us better for successful careers and rich life experiences. The future demands a learning integrated life. The disruption we are in today provides us a lot of opportunities to experience constraints, like we had seen many of our friends with disabilities experience. Look around to recognize those among us who experience constraints and learn from their resourcefulness. This is a big lesson that I see written in bold capitals. I want to just talk about one particular lesson. So it's called the title of that slide is Conquering VUCA, Ask the Experts. So today, more than any other time in history, we live in a world full of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So let's call that VUCA for short. This interesting concept was shared by Dr. Jean Parker from Memorial University during her talk at one of D12's Accessibility Interest Group monthly meetings. I'm quoting her, 2020 was kind of a VUCA year. We had a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, definitely a lot of complexity and ambiguity. We still do. If at all anything, COVID has shown that VUCA is real. As people with disabilities, we are ahead of this game on VUCA because we have to plan for the unexpected all the time. We integrate VUCA into our planning and our everyday lives. That ability to plan is actually an asset in society that is highly unacknowledged. Many people don't even know about it. Most people with disabilities are thought of as a burden, whereas our creativity and our resourcefulness and our resilience to function in society that isn't designed for us is never considered to be an asset. That was a very powerful statement by Dr. Jean Parker. She's blind. What we learn from her thoughts is that we need to be open to listening and learning from those who face extreme constraints. Learning from those among us who live with a disability. Let's ask such people how they manage, how they innovate their way out of every constraint they are faced with. Because true innovation comes out of true constraint. Like my colleague at D2L, Karen Hedrick, who is an accessibility test strategist and a screen reader ninja, she loves to say that when using a screen reader, she cannot remove her blindfold. She cannot cheat. That is an example of true constraint. We disintegrated quite beyond our control. We need to reintegrate intentionally and mindfully. There's a lot we have learned during this disintegrated phase about how to manage constraints, sensory, physical, cognitive, emotional, all sorts of constraints. Interestingly, we have learned to cope by mimicking the mechanisms already perfected by those among us who face these constraints permanently or on a longer term. We need to learn. We need to learn lifelong, to innovate, to make life more wholesome, more inclusive for all of us. We need to learn from the very same people whose constraints we don't empathize with until we experience them ourselves. We see that a very thin line divides constraints experienced inherently by people with disabilities and constraints experienced or constraints thrust upon us, say by COVID. Where do we collectively learn from and how do we manage our constraints? That's precisely from the innovations that people with disabilities have already devised, from those captions and so many other things. We experienced sensory disruptions in our work. Video is not working, audio output is not working, sometimes even input is not working. So long as we fit in the system, we'll never think about how to change the system. It's only when we are a misfit that we think about the adaptations that are needed. So long as we are beautifully fitted into the system that we had crafted for ourselves, we did not think about how to change the system. But when we saw our world disintegrating around us and started feeling like a misfit, we started thinking about accommodations and adaptations that we needed. For example, working from home with all those assistive technologies. This is not the end of this conversation. I invite all of you to join us, 5 of us, in just about 15 minutes. Because if we are moving to a world where more remote or hybrid or blended learning and working is inevitable, we need to ensure that this new world is as inclusive and accessible, as free from barriers for individuals with disabilities as for everyone else. So how do we promote inclusive learning at the workplace? That is the topic for our panel starting at 1:50. Now join the stellar panel, listen, and contribute. Let us learn intentionally. Let us integrate mindfully. Let us make opportunities for everyone to learn all the skills that it takes to get all the jobs in the world. We will all benefit. Thank you very much.